Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you to the Awaken Your Souls Journey podcast. And today I am so thrilled to have Scott Allan with me. And Scott is evidential medium, an author, a TV personality, and host of the Enlightened Life Podcast. And after 30-year career in funeral service, Scott's unexpected journey into mediumship has led to international recognition with sold-out events and appearances in top podcasts like The Forbes Factor and We Don't Die Radio. He helps listeners connect with the spirit world, offering healing messages and insight into life, death, and beyond. So welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I feel like the tables are turned since you were on. Actually, your episode is coming out very shortly. I think next week.
Okay.
This week or next week. So we'll be hearing from you.
Exciting. Thanks. Yeah. So I know everybody's going to wonder how you move from a funeral director into mediumship. This is so fascinating and so interesting. So tell us, how did that come about?
Well, it wasn't intentional. I will say that. I was a funeral director, oh God, for so many years. And I worked at the funeral home even before I was a funeral director. I was 16 when I worked around the funeral home. And there's always been something, you kind of know that there's something going on that may not be 100% right, but you're not thinking, oh, I must be a medium. You just chalk it up to coincidence. I was actually sort of skeptical. But later on, I was in this very remote area of Massachusetts, and I was at least an hour away from anybody I cared about. And my mom and dad were getting older. My mom was sick. I wanted to be closer to home. And I had tried to sell the business a number of times and it just didn't happen. I just couldn't get a buyer or things didn't work out. And then I got a call from the competition down the street, the colleague, around the corner. And it was right. It was the right time. And I just leapt at it and just left. And it was okay. I was able to move closer to home and be there for my parents, and my son was born shortly thereafter. So I think the timing on this was really quite right. But that's when everything started to really manifest. And even though there had been little synchronicities and things had happened, I didn't recognize it as what it was because I just didn't know really what mediumship looked like. I didn't know. I had no idea. But I went through this whole period where it was rather scary, to be honest with you. And there was a lot of things that I couldn't explain. You start to wonder after months and months of this, if you're losing your mind, if you is this mental illness or is it, what is it? And I, towards the end of my career in the funeral business, I started to notice that I was aware of spirit. I could feel like I knew someone was around me, but I didn't know why I knew that or felt that. I could hear them walking around upstairs or coming up and down the stairs. And, nobody else that worked for me ever heard it. They never did. And I thought, well, this place must be haunted. And it sort of fascinated me a little bit. So when I got out of the business, I would say maybe 7, 8, 9 months later, I got a call from a woman that I know, and she said, we're going to this historical museum, which is located in Massachusetts, just outside Boston. It used to be a church rectory, not anymore, but they say it's haunted, and they were going to go see if they could find anything. Now, this woman is probably about 10 years older than me. I'm 59. I'll be 59 shortly. So she's got to be close to 70 now. So she probably would have been like late 50s or 60 at the time. And I said, sure, I'll go with you. But I was really just more fascinated to see if anybody could give me an explanation for what was happening at the funeral homes. And I went and they had this little box. It was, about the size of a cell phone, really, and just scanned the radio stations really, really quickly. And the theory is that if there's a spirit there, it'll talk amongst the white noise and you'll be able to hear it. Well, there was nothing. It was like watching paint dry. It really was a non-event. And I thought, well, I was really hoping to get some answers. I thought really more than wanting to experience something, I wanted them to tell me, oh, is that what was happening there? Well, that must be this, that, or the other thing. Nobody ever did. And I went home and I pulled up the recording because I had recorded what happened. And when I played it back, I could hear 10, 11, 12 of them calling my name over and over and over. And I did not hear it live. So I called her and I said, listen to this. She went, oh my God. She said, I've never heard that before. I mean, ever. So that was the first time that I felt like this isn't random. This is connected to me. And then after that, it picked up and there was more of it. I had gone and got myself one of those little boxes because I wanted to find out how it worked. And I received it in the mail. I went into my home. I opened it up. I turned it on. And right away, there was a voice that said, talk to Scott. And I said, I'm Scott. What's your name? This is David. Oh, that's kind of bizarre. So I kind of got a tongue lashing for that because she said, don't ever do that in your house. It's like an Ouija board. You don't want any of that stuff in your house. So I said, okay, I won't do that again. A week later, a friend of mine is at work, her work. This man walks in and asks for me. And she says, I'm sorry, he's not here right now. Can I take a message? And she said, yeah, tell him David stopped by. And I didn't know a David. And he never called and he never came back. I saw him on the security camera she sent to me. It was nobody I had ever seen or heard of before. And after that, it was David all the time. And I recorded things. I started to record things. If I heard them say my name, I'd pull out a recorder. And they would talk to me. They would talk to me through the radio. Sometimes even on my podcast like this, I will still hear them. If I go back and I do some kind of, when I do the editing and I'm playing back the recording, sometimes I can hear them talking to me. And other people could too. And that was a relief to me because I figured if I can hear it and you can hear it, then I'm not crazy. I might be possessed, but that's a whole other issue, right? At least I don't have to check myself in somewhere. Because let me tell you, when you're going through this, you don't want to talk to anybody about it. You don't want to tell anybody. It's just absolutely frightening. So I'm kind of going through this thing and thinking, like, what is wrong with me? And after about a year and a half of this, I had met this woman along the way who was a medium, and she's the one that told me what was going on. And even the people that I knew who had some connection to this stuff said, I don't think your funeral home's haunted. I don't think all these places you're going to are haunted. I think it's you. I mean, I think they're attached to you. So then I started thinking, oh God, I must have the spirit attachment. So I had hoped this medium would help me, and I called her, and she's the one that told me. And I didn't believe her. Again, that was another learning curve. It was nothing like I thought it was supposed to look like. But it was like the universe kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, and I just couldn't get away with it. And until I learned to accept it and shut it down, they wouldn't leave me alone. And then I realized I had all this ability to kind of somehow get messages for people. And I still can't tell you how it works or why people understand the things that I'm telling them. But I know when I'm channeling it because I'm forgetting it almost as soon as it comes out of my mouth. And I've never heard it before, but it just goes. And then people are sitting in front of me going, yep, I understand that. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. So that's kind of how it happened. That's the quick little story of the whole thing. But I never planned on it. I just didn't know how to stop it. It just came so quickly and was starting to manifest even when I was in the funeral business, but not to the extent that it did once I finally got out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it, like you say, it is kind of disturbing to think that you might be going crazy. And yet, you get all this confirmation, which is amazing. And I'm sure as you continue to do readings that it just helps with that confidence. But do you ever feel like, you're sure?
I'm sure of what.
of the messages that you're giving?
Oh, I trust. It's funny. I've gotten to a point now where I trust everything they give me. I just don't always understand why or the
Right.
meaning behind it. I'll give you a little example. I had a reading a few months ago with a woman who was here sitting with me, and her grandfather came through, and he kept talking about a fender bender. And the way I get my messages, I can see sometimes I see it, or I feel it, or I hear it, or I think it. They were showing me this little accident, and it was like in a parking lot. It was nothing major. It was just like maybe a scratch. But in my head, I'm hearing it's just a fender bender. It's just a fender bender. And that's not a word that I would use all the time. I would probably say to you, did you get in a little accident or something like that? But I was using the word fender bender because I felt like that's what I was being given. And she said, no, I didn't. She couldn't understand it. And he was relentless. He kept giving it to me, giving it to me, giving it to me. I said, listen, I don't know what this is all about, but he keeps talking about a fender bender. I keep hearing it. So she left. And when she left, she called her sister and she asked the sister if the sister had been in an accident. And the sister said, no, I've not. I don't understand that at all. She says, well, she keeps, Grandpa was there and he kept talking about a fender bender. And she said, oh, don't you remember that was the name of his boat, the fender bender? And that's how it works. So I trust everything I get. I had another situation recently too, where I was sitting and the woman's brother came through and was giving me all kinds of information. And she said, ask him where his cell phone is. Now, the funny thing is she had been looking for a cell phone, and it doesn't work that way with me. If I think about something, if I'm in my thinking brain, I'm always going to be wrong. It almost has to like just come out of me organically. So I said, just throw it out there. Maybe it'll come to me in some way. And I have to not understand that that's what it is, because if I do, I'll just put too much thought into it and then it'll be a mess. So she was sitting there, and later on in the reading, and I said, what's with the little box? There's a little box I'm seeing, and it's not like his belongings, although it is. It's sort of like a little box of mementos. It could be jewelry, it could be pictures, it's like little stuff that you would keep to honor him, and just like a little memento box or something. She said, I have no idea. She said, I don't know what that is. She said, I don't know. So she wrote to me, actually yesterday, she wrote to me and she said, I was sitting in my dining room and I was thinking about where can this phone be? And I'm looking around and I'm just sitting there thinking, and she looks, and there was a bench in her dining room. And under the bench, there was this little plastic storage thing that was tucked way underneath to the back. Just a little box. She pulls it out, and in it were all his mementos and the cell phone.
Mm.
Thought, oh my God, he gave it to her. But I mean, it was just not one of those things that if I had thought about it, I'd have been like, well, did you check the bureau? Did you check? Because it's not coming from me. It just sort of funnels in from someplace else. So that really does kind of blow my mind, to be perfectly honest with you. It just does when it happens. I don't know. I never understood it. I never understood how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't sure I believed it before either.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have trouble believing it. And I have to, because I've sat with mediums before and got messages that they could never, ever know. And so I definitely know that there's something to it. But I will tell you that what it's really done is helped me with my process through grief, because there's so much comfort in getting those messages from your loved one, or at least I found that. And I'm sure you've worked with people in that, in grief, and have been able to help them with special messages from their loved ones.
Yeah, the thing I always tell people though is you have to be in the right frame of mind to do this. And I say that because if you don't get a message from them, it could be like losing them twice. And you
Mm.
really have to be ready that they may not come through today. They might come through in 6 months, but they may not come through today. So when someone's in an acute state of grief, I'm really careful about that. A lot of times the grief can block it if you're in that really severe stage. it's counterintuitive. I mean, you would think that wanting it so badly, you'd be ready for it, but it's not. Sometimes it just puts up some kind of a wall. And I don't know if it's the wall that the person puts up because she's in grief, or if it's the expectation from the reader, from the medium, that they are in grief. Therefore, I need to make this work, and then your head gets in the way. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is, but it can happen. There is a group, and I don't know if you've heard of it. We may have talked about it, called the Forever Family Foundation. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, my mentor is a medium with them, and that's kind of their whole thought process too, is that, if they vet everyone, they don't just have anybody doing it. It's a
Mhm.
rigorous process. But,
Right.
if you're able to do this authentically, it can be a real healing tool for those that are in grief, because it does give you the hope that there's something beyond this.
Hmm.
But mediums, anybody who's authentic will tell you, you can't just reach through the veil and pull somebody out. So just because someone sits with me and wants to speak with their mother, their father, their husband, their wife, it doesn't work that way. They have to come organic. In fact, I don't ever want to know who someone's looking to connect with, because it throws me off.
Mm.
It just has to happen organically.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think there's something to, maybe your higher self or something along that line that knows what you need at that time or what would be good for you to hear at that time?
That could be true. That could be true. I have to say this, that it is not a problem for the person who has passed to come through. I've had people come through within hours, the same day that they've passed, they've come through. But it's always been with someone who was not as connected emotionally. And it has always come through to them unexpectedly. They didn't come looking for them, it just happened. So I know that it's possible. I really think it's the human condition that sort of blocks people out. But I do think that when they come through, it's because they have something to say to you, not because you have something to say to them. They know
Right.
everything you're thinking and feeling and wanting to say. So it's because they have potentially unfinished business. They want to say thank you. They want to say I'm sorry. They want to say I love you. Whatever it is, don't beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't make it. That's one that happens occasionally. You didn't make it. You didn't make it to the hospital in time. It's okay. I know you wanted to be there with me, but I had people there to welcome me. It's okay. They know that that's happened. And so that can be very, very comforting for people. Or, occasionally you'll find someone that'll say, tell my son I love the tattoo he had in honor of me. They'll sometimes tell me that they did my signature or whatever it is, and then they did. And it's just mind boggling.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. I know you have a new book. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about the book.
So the book is called In the Presence of Light, A Funeral Director's Journey from Mourning to Mediumship. And it's mourning, Mourning. And it really is taking the reader down the path. I mean, it starts out when I was just a young child, and my grandparents owned a flower shop, and my grandfather would take me delivering with him, and we would go into the funeral homes. And I think that's sort of where the spark happened. But I remember, even at a very young age, 8 or 10 years old, there was this strange empathy that I had that I wasn't seeing with the funeral home staff. And it isn't that they weren't caring people. I think at the time I may have misunderstood, but having done that job, you cannot carry the grief with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I remember going in one day, and we were delivering flowers, and the two owners were friends with my grandparents. And so they were adjusting this body in the casket, talking to my grandfather about what their kids were doing, about football, what was happening in the news, just random stuff, with absolutely no connection to the person in the casket. And I kept thinking, but oh my God, how can they do that? There's someone, their family's coming. They're never going to see this gentleman again. And how can they be so callous about this? And I never said it, but it really kind of stuck with me. And there was this thing that I can do that. I should do that because I can do it better, because I care more. I wasn't quite focused on the whole physical part of the work that I ended up having to do, which I had convinced myself that as long as I could do the other part, I'd put up with it. That's sort of what I had thought at the time. Into my childhood, I had a really great friend growing up who, when he was 10, he had cancer, osteosarcoma, cancer of the bone, and it spread to his lung, and he had his leg removed and he had part of his lung removed, but then he was cancer free. And we were very close. Our parents worked together. Our moms worked together, actually. And then when I was 20 and in embalming school, it came back with a vengeance and he died. And I had a situation with the funeral director at that time. And that's in the book. I wrote about that. And it brings me into the funeral home and the funeral business and my transition out, and the little, there's a couple of chapters which are the little ghost story that happened really along the way. How did this all start to manifest? And then stepping out afterwards, how I met Forbes Riley, the actress, and I wasn't even ready to be doing readings, but she asked me to come on her show, and I did, and I did a reading for her. And after that, I'm starting to get calls from people in Canada and England and Australia and all over the place. And I wasn't ready for that either. I was still not at that space. But it's the awakening, it's the unfoldment, and how I went from a little boy who wanted to be a funeral director to becoming a funeral director to walking away and feeling completely burnt out by it. And yet, at the end of the day, I was exactly where I needed to be. It was a lesson. The whole thing was a lesson. And I'm still dealing with the same people. They're the same people in grief. It's just that I deal with them on, from a different perspective. You know, I used to deal with the living because of the dead. Now I deal with the dead because of the living. They come through because they have something to share. And I think the whole life that I've led until now has been one big lesson.
Yeah. I can relate to that because a lot of the work that I'm doing now, too, I think back and think all of the stuff that I was doing before and how I'm using it now in a different way. So
Yeah.
it's just fascinating how our lives are, feels like there's a real purpose to what you're doing. And this whole awakening really helps you look back and reflect and see some of those things that maybe you wouldn't have noticed before.
Yeah. And that's the first line of my book. I've always been something, I'm paraphrasing, but I've always been exactly where I was supposed to be, even if I didn't recognize it at the time, because it taught me. It was life's lesson. Even things like I was so painfully shy. It was crazy. I mean, it was I never would have got up and spoke in front of anyone. And I had been invited to a party once with a group of people, and there was a man there who was very involved with this regional theater, community theater group. And he said, "Oh, you should come. You should come. We're gonna audition tomorrow. We're doing whatever show it was." And I said, "I don't know about that. I'm not sure I'm gonna. I wouldn't want to audition." Somehow they talked me into it, and I went and I got cast. And then I met up a group of people. So now I had a social thing, a social background. I did that for like 25 or 30 years while I was there, probably 25 years while I was there. And it helped me. I mean, I was doing shows on stages in front of 600 people, 700 people. So now when I step out and I do my mediumship demonstrations, I don't have that stage fright anymore. It's like that was teaching me too. It was teaching me that I can do this, that I can step out, because I'm going to need to deliver these messages and I need to stand out in front of people to do it. There are some that don't, that just work privately, but it's not what I choose to do. I mean, I do those, but I like to also stand up and do the large demonstrations, and I never would have done them if not for that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so amazing that you're doing that and helping so many people understand mediumship better and
Yeah.
understand, that they too have this walk of life and everybody's is a little bit different, but we all have it. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And even as mediums, we're all different. I work with other mediums. I know other mediums, and we're just so totally different from one to another. It's just amazing, really.
Yeah, fascinating. So tell us a little bit more about how people can work with you or see some of your demonstrations.
Sure. So, first of all, my website is mediumscottallan.com, and you can see it on the screen. Allan. Some people want to make it an E, but it's Allan with an A. And I do private readings. I do readings virtually for those who are not near me. I'm located just north of Boston, but I do read for people all over Canada, England, I mean, wherever. But I also do demonstrations. So I'm going to be in Colorado Springs, Colorado in June. Just came back from Naples, Florida. I have been invited to lead a metaphysical cruise out of Miami to the Eastern Caribbean next December. So if anybody likes cruising, it's the Carnival Celebration, sorry, Carnival Celebration next December, the 7th through the 14th. And I'll be doing a mediumship demonstration there and private readings and all of this other stuff that we've got planned for the cruise, in addition to all the carnival stuff. So, there's those events. And then I do a bunch of other smaller venues and, you know, 40, 50, 60 people. But I'm around the Boston area and around New England primarily. But like I say, I do get out and move around. So I can be different places. But all my events and all my classes are listed on there as well. So there will be some online mediumship practice circles for people who feel like they have gifts that they want to explore. Those will be online when we book those again. And all of my events are there as well. You can listen to the Enlightened Life podcast. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which is called Soul Awakenings. So it's all right there. Everything is right there. And if you want the book, it's just about everywhere. But the primary places are Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Goodreads and Balboa Press. You can get hardcover and paperback, but there it is. But it's the story through the funeral home and back.
Beautiful. And I encourage people to check out all of that and to maybe learn a little bit more about the whole mediumship thing. And wow, that cruise would be great.
I'm excited.
Check that out.
I'm excited. And it won't be 30 below zero. I could tell you that. Well, we better
Yeah.
not in the Eastern Caribbean. Good Lord. Uh,
Exactly. Well, do you have any parting words or advice before we go?
I want to share one little thing, and I just find this so amazing. You can look up anybody that's has the need can look up the Forever Family Foundation, and I'm not a medium with them. I haven't gone through any of the testing or anything, but I had a gentleman that I had met that had lost his son, and he was a member of the foundation. He and his wife, and he took a picture of this bonfire that they had, and there were people sitting around. It was like a retreat or something, weekend retreat, and they had this huge bonfire. And when the picture came out, he snapped it and he showed it to me. You could see the bonfire was in the shape of an angel, had wings, folded hands, a head, and a halo. And it was the most miraculous thing I've ever seen in my life. So, I just want people to know that there is something beyond this sometimes awful world at times that we live in. And there's something more. I don't claim to know it all. I think we see just a fraction of what's really out there, but there is something there. And I hope that people will find peace in that at the end of the day.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you again for sharing and thank you for taking the time.
It was such a pleasure. I was so happy to speak with you again. This is great.
Yeah. All right. And thanks everyone for listening and bye for now.
Bye bye.